Welcome to Open House, the real estate and mortgage show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
If you have any questions about mortgages or real estate, give us a call at 521-TALK. That's 521-8255.
Or text 1-800-580-CFRA.
With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
Hello, October.
Yeah.
Good morning. What are you laughing?
Why do you have that perma smile on your face?
Because I just sent a video or a little message there on the camera that Greg set up. So,
well, you know Jocelyn sees all these videos, right?
I do, and that's what she's going to see now.
Is
what
it,
I just said.
Is it offside or is it something
It's not
you're
offside.
Before we even begin, are you old ladies going to behave yourselves?
We are going to behave, but Paul's going to brag about buying breakfast, which he promised 3 weeks ago to buy breakfast.
Listen. We don't need to go into the breakfast every week, but the one thing I do want to say is I asked Frank for one favor. I sent him a message last night, which he usually doesn't.
What did you say? Tell me what your message said.
I said, hey, Frank, my son is studying for his Phase 2 exam.
And I'm going to be there at what time?
I'm going to be there helping him. I'm going to come in a little bit late. Can you please make sure just tomorrow, you get the cobwebs off your wallet and you buy breakfast? And what happened? I bought breakfast again. So anyways, now on to the show, now that I got that out. Let's go.
What breakfast did you buy me?
I bought everyone breakfast.
No, what did you buy me?
Well, apparently producer Steve, needs breakfast every week now, too. Anyone else in the studio need breakfast?
Actually, the guys before us, I told you.
Okay, let's go, Steve.
Let's go.
There's three guys sitting out front you can help out.
Yeah. And there's more than that.
Just jump in my pockets like everybody else, Frank.
Unfortunately, there's more than that in the Byward market. So.
The numbers for September, I didn't see them this morning, but you say they are out. Any big surprises?
Well, so the board has changed a lot of things, so I had to go searching a little bit, but I did find everything that we need. And not surprising. I mean, the number of sales were up 11.4% in September over September last year, but as we talked about before getting on the break, our September last year was not great. Our August last year was not great, so we expected the number of sales to be up. Average sale price is up 1.4%. And when we look at year to date, the number of sales is up 6.4%, which is decent. I'm happy to see that number. And the average sale price is up 0.9%. So,
year over year, you're talking?
Year over year. So average sale price right now is just shy of $680,000. Well, keep in mind, a couple of years ago, our average sale price peaked at $739,000. So it's great to see the numbers up by, let's say 1%, but keep in mind last year we went down 5.5%. So we got some ground to make up. We're slowly...
Not a big surprise in the last year, though, with rates being what they were. You weren't expecting anything crazy.
No, we weren't. And listen, I don't really care to see the average sale price skyrocket because it hurts buyers and it really hurts sellers in the end because most sellers have to buy somewhere anyways, right? So I'm happy to see. I would like to see, like I mentioned last week, I think anywhere between like a 3 to 4 to 5%, increase in the average sale price is very, very healthy. We're probably going to end, we're at 1% now, just shy of 1%. Let's say we end at 1.5, maybe 1.6, or potentially even 1. Let's say between 1 and 2%. I consider that a flat year.
Yeah.
And that's probably what we're going to be. Our number of sales will be up. Our average sale price will be flat. Which, when we went down for the first time since the early 90s, last year we went down 5.5%. I was hoping to make a little bit of that back, and making 1% of that 5.5 is not terrible, but it's not great. And like we talked about, our August and September last year was not great, so I expected our numbers to be much higher, and they weren't. But there's lots of positive signs. I mean, there's some negatives. I mean, when it comes to rates and things like that, but it's. I don't know about this economy and the market right now. It was nice to hear Greg on the way in, and we were talking about, the listings and things like that. And he said he had a busier, well, I'll let you tell you, Greg, he had a busier September.
Oh, far busier September this year than compared to last year. And surprisingly, like September is often, especially at the beginning when school's going back in, it's usually quite quieter. We were slammed right at the beginning of September. So, I think the rate drops have really helped, and people are getting interested in getting back in the market.
So, how did September end for you? As busy?
The start was crazy, but uncharacteristically crazy at the start. It ended normally.
Does that have anything to do with mortgages coming due, do you think, Frank?
What, the people are selling? I don't think so right now. I don't feel that anyway. I haven't had anybody call me and say, Frank, my mortgage is coming up for renewal, but I'm going to sell because I can't afford it. Canadians historically are well known for not selling homes because they can't afford the mortgage if it's normal circumstances. In scenarios where you've lost your job or there's a health issue, and that's different. But in normal circumstances, even with the interest rates changing, Canadians just bear down and make sacrifices elsewhere, which in turn will hurt the economy if that happens. Yeah. So, we saw a little blip yesterday where bond markets spiked because the U.S. magically created 250,000 jobs last month, which is incredible. Even Jeremy Powell scratches his head at that number.
That's more than double they were expecting, right?
140 to 250. So way, way above consensus. Now, what we need to understand about the U.S. labor market is that they throw out numbers, and then for twice after they throw out that number, they do revisions. So over the last 12 months, the revisions have amounted to about 800,000 less jobs than they originally reported. So as much as everybody thinks that those revisions are going to come pretty fast and steady, the bottom line is that the markets react to that first number that comes out. So therefore, we saw bond markets spike. So, anybody that's now, if they're getting scared, this is just a blip. No different than when we saw rates go up. When Bank of Canada was raising rates, they paused for 4 or 5 months, and then they raised again 2 more times. So there's always going to be those little blips. It's not going to be a downward trajectory. It's just going to be so it's going to be one of those roller coasters where the ups are going to be minimal and the downs are going to be much larger moving forward.
But you know what? Here's the problem. We talked about, I don't know, month and a half ago, we talked about, I can't remember what the number was, but it was a high percentage of Canadians that if they had one extra expense come to them, they a tire burst or something like that, or their furnace blew or something, they couldn't afford it because they're living paycheck to paycheck. I had 3 mortgages renew this week, and I thought that the payment was going to be drastic, but it was still, when I have 3 mortgages and they all went up about $200 every 2 weeks, that's still $400 a month. I'm in a more of a fortunate position. I can afford that, but it still hurts.
Not everybody can.
But not everyone can.
He can afford it because he's got 3 mortgages on one house.
But hold on. Yeah. But hold on. Like, I was thinking to myself as I was going up, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of lucky I'm in a boat that I can actually afford that. What if there's someone who's living like total paycheck to paycheck? $400 a month is a whack of money. It's $100 a week. Like, that's a lot of money for someone to be able to afford.
And continuously. Going forward.
And going forward. So, yeah, and I'm at probably the start of when people are starting to renew, when mortgages are coming due now. It's going to start to trickle down even more. And if we can't get those rates down, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that they can't stomach that extra payment anymore.
279, 284, 289 is what the rates were 5 years ago. So today you're in the 4s. You're in the low to mid 4s. So
that's not drastic.
It's not drastic, but again, like Paul says, if you're just barely making ends meet, because grocery bills used to be $100 a week, now they're $200 a week. Utilities used to be, $500 a month, now they're $800 a month. All of a sudden, you start adding the mortgage to that, you start adding everything else to it, and all of a sudden you're in trouble and you're using credit cards to live off of. Yeah. Well, that's not acceptable. I can tell you that most of the mortgages are coming up for renewal. There are a lot of Canadians that have outside debt. They've got personal lines of credit debt. They've got, thankfully, if their mortgage coming due now, yes, your interest rate is going up, but thankfully you've inherited a lot of equity based on the values of homes going up like they did in 2020, 2021. So at least you've got some equity built in. Even someone that bought a house with 5% down back in 2019, today has 35, 40% worth of equity in their home because of the value of their home. So at least they've got that to fall back on, where we can get some of that equity out, be able to turn it over and pay off the other debt. And therefore your payments are going to be reasonably similar to what they are now, based on the fact that you no longer have those lines of credits and credit card payments.
Yeah, I was actually, now that I'm thinking about it, one of those mortgages I was thinking I was actually a little bit lighter than what I was actually saying. And the reason is I have a specific credit card that I use for breakfast on Saturday mornings. And I had to roll that into my mortgage. So that's probably why it was much higher, because that credit card was maxed I think it was 20 grand on Frank's breakfast. So
Well, I don't know. I'm drinking water, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
So that's probably why one of my payments was so high, mainly because I rolled in a lot of debt.
How much has breakfast gone up?
It's gone up a lot. Let me tell you, from when I bought it years and years and years and years and years, what have we been doing the show? Almost 20 years. That's why it gets expensive.
Your math
let me
is
tell
really
you.
bad.
Yeah.
Numbers are bad for you, eh?
Whatever.
Like sell houses. Don't worry about the math. I'll do the math.
Yeah. This is welcome to the marriage show.
Yes.
You know,
Marriage counseling.
How did I become a counselor?
why are you and Greg shaking your head every time Frank and I open our mouth? You know,
Because they know what's coming out. No, but so we saw some lenders increase interest rates on their fix by 10, 15 basis points. Again, not earth shattering, and it's just a blip.
But if all of these changes take a while to work their way through the economy, why so panicky are people right now?
Well, the markets are panicky. So keep in mind, fixed rates are derived from what happens with bond markets. So when bond markets see,
but that's why I'm asking, why are the markets panicking?
Because they see 250. So think about this: U.S. Treasury just dropped a 0.5 percentage point, saying that our economy is likely in trouble, and then 3 weeks later, this labor report comes out saying that 250,000 jobs were created in a month. So the market is scratching their heads saying, what is going on here? How could U.S. Treasury drop a 0.5 point and actually say that our economy is in trouble? We got to make sure that the unemployment stays where it is. Because I don't think a 0.5 percentage point done at the middle of September had any impact on the jobs in September. So, and what else is happening in 3 weeks in the U.S.?
Yeah,
there's an election happening.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, again, for regular people, we scratch our heads saying, well, of course, maybe that number's there for a reason, right? To try and get some votes.
October 23rd, we have a rate announcement here, and you've been pretty gung-ho about 0.5 point. Are you still gung-ho about 0.5 point now?
So right now, 70% of economists think it's going to be 0.5 point, and 30% think it's going to be 1/4 point.
Before the numbers came out from the States?
Before the numbers. Even yesterday, they came out with it. Because in Canada, our unemployment is higher than it was in 2019, pre-pandemic. So and there is a labor report coming out in Canada. So and there's an inflation report coming too. But the inflation, if it's anywhere between 2 and 2.5, we ended at 2 last month. It's anywhere between 2 and 2.5, that's acceptable. It's the unemployment number that's going to be the key to whether it's 1/4 point or 0.5%. If that unemployment number goes up, expect a 0.5% drop on October 23rd.
It's weird how, we want those rates to come down, but those rates only come down if there's some
bad
issue in the economy.
Pandemic.
So great, if unemployment
I
goes
have
up.
no job, but
if unemployment goes up, that's awesome. Rates come down. Well, no, I mean, where's that steady balance where we're happy with the unemployment numbers?
The truth is we were there in 2019. The unemployment number was fairly normal. Our inflation was normal. We were at a pace before the pandemic where you were getting a 5-year mortgage at 3%. The prime rate at the banks was 3.95. You were taking an adjustable or variable rate mortgage, you were in the low 3s. We had regular unemployment. We were there. And then the pandemic hit. And the pandemic had us go up, way up, like a roller coaster. And now we're on our way down. And we hit just like a roller coaster. You hit this flat spot, a little bit up, and then you come back down. And that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Paul Rushforth, Frank Napolitano here. Did you guys read the story about the condo in Toronto that is asking for a $70,000
Boy,
assessment?
not happy people, in there?
Oh, my goodness.
Asking for what, sorry?
Well,
$70,000 assessment.
They have to redo the parking garage. The place is only 7 years old.
Yeah, so
they want $70,000.
And so that's a bad managed condo, for one. And secondly, that's a bad contractor job that they have to redo
Poorly
something
built.
after 7 years. Yeah. Now, asking $70,000 per unit, obviously we don't see that here in Ottawa as much, but I've seen assessments where people have been asked for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 or $50,000.
But how do you know? Because you're moving into a building where you think, well, it's only 7 years old.
So that's the risk of moving into a condo. Now, you move into a brand new condo, here's the bonuses and the negatives. Number one, the pro is, yes, if it's managed properly, what you pay in condo fees should be what you pay in condo fees for years. Keep in mind when they do a status certificate review, they look at it every 5 years. So if the balconies or the roof or something, you'll know when you're going to buy something that it says, in 5 years we're going to do this. Well, in a new condo, you should have to do nothing, right? So there shouldn't be anything to do, and you should have no special assessment like that after 7 years. When you're buying an older condo, hold on, before I get into that, new condos, if it's not managed properly, you might be like, oh, great, $300 in condo fees is nothing. oh yeah, we mismanaged this and mismanaged that, so we're jacking up to $400. So you want to make sure you.
How do you know what the maintenance fee is going to be before the condo is built?
Well,
if you buy ahead of time.
When you're buying it, they estimate per square foot. So they'll say 60 cents a square foot or something like that. 70 cents a square foot, depending on where you're buying. Obviously, downtown is going to be more per square foot. Outskirts are going to be less, but at an estimate is what your condo fees are going to be by the square footage of your unit. You expect them to have done their due diligence and know how much the lighting is going to cost, and this, and the parkings, and the everything that's going to cost, and it's in that condo fee. If it's not managed properly, they might have undervalued everything there, and then come back to you afterwards and say, "Sorry, we were banking on $1 million, but now it's $1.2 million, so we have to up your guys' condo fees." Now it won't go up huge. Where the risk comes is when you're buying into an older building that, the roof is starting to get a little bit older, the balconies are starting to age a little bit, the parking is starting to need.
Do they not budget for that ahead of time?
They do. And that's why a good managed condo, there should be really no special assessments because everything's managed properly. However, you never, it's like a house, like no one foresaw a roof buckling after, I was talking to a buddy of mine who I actually sold him my house, my personal residence, and we moved out of it after year 5. He had to reshingle it on year 6. And I'm like, what? The builder must have put absolutely the worst shingles in the world on this home. Year 6, he had to reshingle his house. Year 6. So you just hope that the builder puts the right stuff in and they estimate the right costs. When you're buying something a little bit older, you have to understand that, things are going to start to go. However, when you buy, that has been, the amount that's being charged is looked at over 5 years. When they review it again, they might say, okay, within 5 years, we have to redo all the balconies. So now we're going to hit everyone with, a $10,000 special assessment. That's the only negative of buying in a condo, is that you're at the mercy of what the condo board deems necessary to keep the building in good standing.
But when you buy a new home, isn't there a warranty that goes along with it?
There is, but
how long?
There is. Well, it all depends on certain parts. It could be anywhere from a year to 7 years, right? Is the new home warranty. On a condo, same thing. So like that garage, I don't know what happened there, but
the rain's getting in. Apparently, it was.
Yeah, so I'm sure the builder has some recourse with the contractor who did that work for him. After 7 years, you don't just say 7 years and notice it now. They would have noticed it a year, 2, 3, 4 years ago. So there should have been some recourse for the builder hitting all their residents with a $70,000 special assessment. There was one here in Ottawa, the same thing. It was sort of a lower end priced condo building where people were kind of living, somewhat paycheck to paycheck, and they had a major repair in the building, and they basically went to all the residents and said, we got to jack out, or we got to hit you with a such and such special assessment. Well, these people were living paycheck to paycheck, and they didn't foresee this. And so now it became, the building was almost an impossible sell now because, we had to tell people that there's this major issue with it. And 2, most of the residents couldn't sell these units to get out of them, but they couldn't pay the special assessment. So they were, excuse the term, but they were screwed, right? So anytime you're buying a condo, you got to do your due diligence, and that's why you have to work with someone who will actually do that due diligence for you, because there's some beauty with buying condos. There's also some pitfalls with buying condos.
The lawyer reviews the status certificate, though, right? You count on the lawyer to look at the financials on your behalf, because most people wouldn't know what to look for.
But the one thing the lawyer can't do, absolutely the lawyer will look at the financials, but the lawyer can't say, well, was the underground garage people really competent?
Agreed.
Were this people competent? How were the windows?
And it's unforeseen, right?
It's unforeseen, and that's the only negative. Now, in a house, if all of a sudden there's leaks and the windows have to be replaced, you're on the hook for all the windows. Yeah. At least in a condo, you're all pooled in the money, and you're sharing in the cost of all these windows. But you also could be looking at a 60-story building with hundreds and hundreds of residents and hundreds or thousands of windows. So there is a pitfall when buying a condo for sure.
So if I got that mortgage 3 years ago, how receptive would the bank be if I go back knocking on the door and saying, oh, they want another $70,000. Can we add to my mortgage?
Oh, you get a line of credit, assuming you have the equity in there. But if you bought that property with 5% down 3 years ago, you're SOL, unfortunately, because there's probably not enough equity built in there for you to be able to borrow those funds.
And how do you sell that unit now saying, by the way, I bought my unit for $400, but now we have a special assessment. Like, you're going to be underwater.
You're knocking that $70,000 off out of the gate.
To be honest with you, you're probably not selling. unless someone steals that unit. You're not selling, and that's the problem with buying a condo. And these people that are in that predicament, I just hope it's an upscale building where people can actually write that check and not kill them too much. Because if it's not an upscale building, that's a debilitating check to write. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
But
I've heard of it
paint
happening.
every condo with that.
No,
brush.
not at all. That's what I'm saying.
It's just some good condos. There's a lot of good condos out there.
100% there's some good condos. But what I'm saying is, you got to do your due diligence anytime you're buying into a condo. You need to know what's happening with all the elements. Just like when you're buying a house. You know, when I'm buying a resale house off you, Steve, I want to know, the major ticket items. I want to know what's going on with the foundation, the electrical, the roof, the windows, the furnace. Those are the big ticket things that cost a lot of money. Well, same with a condo. You want to know when you're buying into a condo that everything is tickety-boo and the windows are great, the balconies are good, the roof is okay, the HVAC's okay, that, there's no special assessments, things like that. No matter what you're buying, you have to do your due diligence.
So what recourse does the condo corporation have if you don't have $70,000?
Here comes the legal. But now again, like, if you can't pay $70,000, what are you going to sue them for rocks? Like, it's
but what are they going to do? Kick you out?
Well, you own the building.
They could put a lien on your unit, right?
Yeah.
So they could use the money to do the work and then put a lien on your specific property, so that when you do go to sell it, you got to pay it back.
That's a legal issue, but that's a good question. It's a good legal issue.
Wow, 18 years, I finally got a good question.
Stephen, you've had a great
You've had two.
question.
Okay, not one. You've had two.
Not in a row.
Yeah, not in a row.
The only, as we go to break here, the only stupid question you've ever asked is, who's buying breakfast this morning?
521
dumb
521-8255. We'll be right back.
Real Estate and Mortgage Show on News Talk 580 CFRA.
Welcome back. Frank Politano, Paul Rushforth here. Greg is here too. When he's not taking, this is the only hour you're not taking pictures of homes in the entire week.
Paul.
Right?
He videos Paul, which is
weird. What's funny? This week was the first week. Like, I've been working with Greg for eons, right? Like, I mean, when he was part of his old company, I'm not going to say any names. When he was part of his old company, I worked with Greg for the long. I got a funny story for you. So I worked with Greg for the longest time. And then he calls me one day. He's like, Paul, I'm really sorry. I know I gave you, a discount based on all the volume you do, but I got to jack up your prices. And he jacked up my prices considerably. And I remember saying to Jocelyn and my management team, I was like, you know what? Screw Greg. I'm going to find someone better. So I went out and I got a different company who matched Greg's old rates. And I said, you know what? Greg, I won't say it on radio, but I said some profanities.
That's always a nice negotiation.
Yeah. So no, I didn't say this to Greg, but I hired this other company, and I said, I'm not using Greg anymore. And I hired this other company. It lasted about 3 weeks, and I was like, Greg, I'll pay your prices. I'll take you back. Please take me back. And then he was just so good, I just thought I'd steal him and hire him anyways. But this was the first time of probably decades working with Greg that I had a client who called me and said, we don't like the pictures. They're terrible. And, of course, I looked at Greg's pictures. I thought, maybe he wasn't having a good day or this and that. I looked at the pictures, and I'm like, those look so good. I don't know what you're looking at. And they're like, we don't like this and we don't like this. And I said, well, here's what I need you to do. Take some pictures, how you like them, and then I'll put them beside Greg's, and then we will decide after that. So they took some pictures. I put them beside Greg's, and I sent them to them. And I'm like, case closed? They're like, case closed.
Hey, Greg. Good time to ask for a raise. Right about now, because there's other realtors that do listen to the show. You might be getting some offers this week.
Really, Frank?
I'm
just telling you, that's the risk you take by doing what you just did.
I'm really happy where I am.
Okay.
There you go. See?
After all, he buys you breakfast once in a while. He buys you a coffee
and I make him work on Saturdays. What kind of guy am I?
You're a great guy.
Yeah.
When did you last jack your rates?
At the old company?
No, with Paul.
Okay, let's change topic.
Not an on-air conversation.
Because it's probably time, right?
But now's a good time to.
Well, you know what?
For
For the longest time, my real estate coach was saying to me, you got to get a photographer, videographer to work for you and stuff like that. I'm like, why? I mean, I got the best I'm using right now. And he's like, no, you need one, especially for the videos. So before I hired Greg, I was trying to do my own videos. It was like a train wreck. Like I was, trying to position my iPhone, and then I'd run back and I'd put my microphone on, and I'm just like, the videos were a train wreck.
Some of them can be comical, though.
Oh, listen, done is better than perfect, right? Done is better than perfect. My real estate coach would always say, just do it, right? And then, as soon as I hired...
But it takes away from the message. If it's hokey, it takes away from the message.
It does.
You need some good quality.
It does, but you know what number one is? Obviously camera, but number one is sound. Sound is really, really important. So, but since I've hired Greg, I don't mind doing videos anymore.
How much extra do you spend on filters for Paul?
Well, not enough, because I'm trying to say, get rid of the gut. Get rid of the gut. And Greg, I looked fat last week.
No, I changed the camera angle this week.
The off-white jacket doesn't help. Just
That's Petra's fault. She dresses me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to real estate mortgages.
Yeah.
People knocking on your door these days, how much of them are using equity to take care of high
more
bills?
than half.
More than half.
Yeah. Now, some resist and say, Frank, we don't want to add more years to our mortgage. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. And listen, if that's what you want, then that's okay. But you're throwing money away. If you've got credit card balance or unsecured personal lines of credits with big balances on them, you're just making the banks more money. You're not keeping it in your own pocket. You're giving it to someone else.
You're taking longer to pay it, too.
You're taking longer to pay it. You're paying way more interest. I get it. You've got a plan for your mortgage. I get it. But sometimes plans don't go the way they're supposed to. And nobody expected interest rates to go up the way they did over a 2-year period. Nobody counted on that. So
we were kind of lucky that the equity went up as well, though.
Of course. And that's my point, is like, you bought this house for $400,000. Today it's worth $700,000. There's no way you counted on $300,000 worth of equity in a 5-year period. So, yeah, your mortgage started off at $360,000, and now because of all the debt you've accumulated, you got to start at $380,000. We feel like we're going backwards, but you're not, because you had $50,000 in equity 5 years ago, and now you have $300,000 worth of equity. You haven't gone backwards.
Well, not only that, how big would your mortgage be if you bought that same place today?
Correct. And the other part is people get so caught up in this 30-year amortization, like we don't want to pay our mortgage for 30 years. I don't care whether your mortgage is 20, 25, 30 years. You control how fast you pay off your mortgage.
Yeah.
Nobody else does. The amortization, all it does is sets a payment up. Maybe you're at the stage of your life right now with everything being so expensive and the rates being higher that you want the amortization to be at 30. So instead of accruing other debt outside of your mortgage, you're not, because you're keeping your payments on your mortgage reasonable, and you don't have to use your credit cards or anything else to pay your debts on a monthly basis. So that's good. And then as interest rates come down, then you can adjust the amortization. You could say, keep my payment the way it is, but now that the interest rate is lower, now my amortization is going to come down. Or maybe you're at the stage where you still have to pay for daycare, and you've got another year before your kid goes to school, and then your daycare costs come down tremendously. So take the 30-year amortization now, and then apply that extra money that you've got left over a year from now. Increase your payments so that your amortization comes down. So don't let the amortization take away from what it's meant to be. It's meant to help you during a certain time frame. And I will say to everybody, you can go down, you can't go up. So if you decide to choose a 20-year amortization, and all of a sudden you have a health scare, or you lose your job, or an unexpected expense comes up, you can't go back up to 30. But if you start at 30 and you increase your payments, something happens, you can go back up to the original amortization. You can lower your payment if something happens.
So if
And
you,
you said
if
it.
you
You said it right there, Frank. I mean, it helps you ease the pain that you're in right now potentially, and you're right. You can change it, but you can't go the other way.
You can't go well, it's going to cost you. You got to go through a lawyer. You got to requalify. You got to do everything. But if you just set the amortization higher for now, you can even increase the payment the day after your mortgage funds. You can say, I want to increase my payment by 20%. Then automatically your amortization will likely go down 3, 4, 5 years.
People
Right
don't realize.
there. So why
people don't
wouldn't you
realize that? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to pull a Frank and interrupt you there, Stephen.
Twice.
Would you like to get your question out before me? Go ahead, Stephen.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
Oh, I forget
You
what I was
forgot.
going to.
You
No.
forgot.
But what people do, what people don't realize. Welcome to the comedy hour.
Yeah.
What people don't realize though, with your online banking, like, okay, so I've had 2 or 3 or 4 really good months at work. I can double my payment. I can add some money. I can you can always do that on a short term basis. So you might as well take the ease of the payment right now and then make those changes as you go.
What if you take a 30-year amortization, you set your payments for 25 years? Is it a wash? Does it work out exactly the same?
Well, again, you can take the 30-year amortization as soon as the mortgage funds increase the payment so that you're back to a 25-year amortization and everything goes well, that's great. But if something happens where all of a sudden you're tight for money, then you can go to the lender and say, hey, I know I increased my payments. I want to reduce them back to normal.
And there's nothing wrong with taking the extra that you would have increased your payments, put it in savings, and at the end of the year, drop the whole nut on your mortgage.
That's the other myth that's out there, the end of the year. Banks tell people the end of the year. It's not the end of the year. If you get your mortgage on July 1st, so between July 1st and June 30th of the next year, you can apply money towards your mortgage. Most lenders and banks, you're not restricted to one payment at the end of the year. You can do it any time. So if you get a mortgage for $300,000 and your prepayment privileges are 15% per year, that's $45,000. You don't have to wait until you save $45,000 or $10,000. If you have $5,000 at the end of October, apply towards your mortgage principal reduction. If you have another $5,000 in February, apply that towards your principal. You don't have to do it all at once.
It's just the total. You can't go
the
over
total.
that
You
45.
can't, over a 12-month period, you can't exceed that 15% of the original mortgage amount. That's all.
You know, Frankie, earlier you mentioned that, and what people don't realize is that goes right on your principal.
Yeah.
That's not interest and principal. That's principal.
And
that
your
goes
payment stays the same.
And that goes a long
So now
way.
your mix
Yeah.
changes too automatically.
Less
Because now
interest,
you
yeah.
owe less. So all of a sudden now the amount that goes to principal of every payment increases and the amount of interest decreases.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, you were talking about how, people didn't realize how much equity they built. I know rates went up, but there was tons of equity. I still remember at that point, there was still a lot of seller greed at that point. I remember still going in to meet with sellers and saying, listen, guys, I understand your neighbor sold for $719 and, your house is only worth $700. Well, that's BS. Okay, well, if I would have been here a year earlier, I would have been telling you your house was worth $420.
Yeah.
So, people built up so much equity in that time frame. Yes, the rates went up and it was a lot tougher, but if you had to sell, you built up so much equity. The only people in the market that I kind of feel very sorry for is the early 2022. I mean, whenever we get a call from someone who says, yeah, I bought it in February of 2022, I'm like, oh.
You may have paid too much for it.
Well, this is going to sting. This is definitely going to
But
sting.
they had lower rates too, no?
They were starting to,
Yeah,
they were
starting to
kind
go
of
up.
like, they went up a couple times. So they're starting to go up. But, Jan to April of 2022 was a tough period. And the one thing I tell people when they call me and they said, I bought in that time period, if they have to sell, then yes, it's going to hurt a little bit, but, keep in mind, if you have to buy, things are a little bit lower than where they used to be. It's
if you bought then and you have to sell, it's because you have to sell.
It's
though.
because you have to sell. But I've always said real estate's a long-term game. So if you don't have to sell, don't sell. If you're looking to sell to make money, that's a tough period of time
I think
to make money in.
The only time in history in Ottawa that real estate wasn't a long-term game was like 4 years ago. That was the only time that they went up that much
Yeah.
in such a short period of time.
Well, it did. And anyone who says, oh, I foresaw that was coming, it was like, no, we didn't. And the word we used for a lot of that chunk of time was fluid. The market is so fluid because what I talked about on the radio on one Saturday was so different than the next Saturday because I didn't know where that market was going. And usually, even now, you can almost predict where the market is going. Like, I know what the next couple months are going to be like. I know what Jan, Feb, March, and April are going to be like. In that period, someone was like, what's the price of my house? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like,
It would change week to week.
It would change week to week. And so I'd actually go in and I'd say, your house is a low end of 700. And in a normal market, I'd say, a high end of 720. But you'd actually have to go in and say a low end of 700, a high end of 900.
Yeah, with the multiple offers, it was insane.
You didn't know, and because Toronto was going through the same thing, it became unaffordable to live in Toronto. So we had a lot of Toronto buyers, and they'd get into a bidding war, and they'd say, "Oh, geez, I only have to spend $800 on this townhome. How cheap is that? I'm going to go blow $800 on this townhome." Because in Toronto, that's 1.2. Yeah. But $800 in Ottawa is a very, very expensive price to pay for that. Yeah. So it was a kind of a weird situation where, we had Toronto buyers coming in. We had bidding wars going crazy. Nobody knew prices of homes because we never knew what someone was going to bid on. And your house could be $700 one week. And next week, it's worth $800 because someone outbid someone and paid $800 for a similar home. So it was a weird period of time. And
I like it now. It's a lot more steady. You can take your time, look at the properties
Yeah.
you're interested in. There's no rush.
It was really tough to be a buyer's agent in those periods because, I mean, some of our agents would be, Paul, like, here's what I did in this situation, and I still lost out. And I'm like, I don't think I would have changed anything. You did everything right. Yeah. You know, asking your buyer to spend $200,000 over asking price is like you're doing what was right at the time for them to get that house. You didn't get the house? Well, maybe it wasn't meant to be. Maybe they weren't just meant to spend.
And some people were just silly back then. They wanted they'd been out of so many homes that when they found one, they went, I don't care, I'll pay whatever.
There was a lot of FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, everyone's buying homes, so I'm going to go buy a home.
Yeah.
What they didn't realize is rates were on the increase, prices were skyrocketing high, and the only way they could go was down. As rates were going up and prices were going down, we're in a different environment now where rates are going down, prices are going to go up.
We will be right back. FOMO, real estate and mortgage talk. 521-TALK, 521-8255.
580 CFRA.
Welcome back. All right, what can we look forward to in October, Mr. Rushforth?
Well, you know what? I mean, we didn't have a great October last year, so I'm assuming number of sales are going to be up again. I'm assuming the average sale price will be up again as well. But I think we're going to have very similar numbers to what we just saw last month. I think we're going to see, you know, probably double-digit number of sales up from October of last year, and probably anywhere between 1% and 3% average sale price up. But you know what? You never know.
If the rates come down the 24th, are we in for a huge November?
So here's the prediction: is they are now they were predicting. I mean, the states with their job numbers might alter this a little bit, but they were predicting an extremely robust end of fall, which we don't ever see here in Ottawa. You know, like a lot of realtors, mortgage brokers, everyone, they kind of take their foot off the gas when it comes near to the end of fall because it's now work on your business going into 2025. We might be very busy in November, December this year. Maybe, well, of course, October's still a good
weather dependent, though.
Weather dependent, but usually...
Well, yes and no. There's so much frustration. People have been waiting to pull the trigger for so long now.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I know Greg was saying, oh, mine is the busiest September ever for listings and that. I'm like, that's great and all. I'm glad we got all these listings, but sales now, like what's happening with the sales? And I think in November, December, I do hope people... get ready to get into this market because I do expect the first few months of 2025 to be extremely robust. And once again, Steve, it's a bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, Steve. So I just think if you miss out on those first couple months, I think you might be missing out on some really good prices in today's market. So I wouldn't wait.
I'd start at least looking now, wouldn't you?
Oh, I would. I mean, I would start buying now. I mean, we're seeing rates coming down. We're seeing...
No, but if I'm looking and I'm thinking maybe another month, maybe another 2 months, I want to see the property now while it's looking as good as it's going to look outside.
Absolutely.
And then even if I don't pull the trigger this week, I have some choice. You know?
You want to see what the yards look like, the gardens look like, the landscaping looks like, especially if you're looking for something with a pool and landscaping and all that. It's always nice to see it, touch it, feel it, rather than see it covered in snow and just in pictures. So I would get yourself in the market as soon as possible.
And if you are thinking of selling in January, February, get Greg in now to take some shots.
Don't be a
Rushforth.
Yeah, don't make a Paul Rushforth mistake and put all your stuff away and then get Greg in later after putting it all back out. But yeah, we do that right now. We will get Greg in to get the shots now, so they look great for when it comes to Jan, Feb, March. But we're now getting to the point where gardens are slowly starting to turn and
so
trees.
Do it now. Yeah.
You agree, Greg? Now's the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, gardens are mostly done. And I'm starting to see pools covered and closed already. Yeah.
So if you have to keep your pool open a little bit longer, get it open and get Greg in there ASAP. But let us know if you want to list before the crazy market in spring.
I closed mine this week. The pool. I mean,
it's time.
You could see already the weather. Nighttime next week, we're supposed to get single digits. Just close it at this point.
Frank was out closing his pool, and Greenpeace tried to roll him back in the water.
You know what? I've always taken my boats and my jet skis out of the water just a little bit early. People are like, "Why are you taking out? It's so beautiful." I said, "Because our market goes from 28 degrees to 9 degrees overnight," and I said, "I'd rather get these out of the water while it's still nice to get in the water."
Yeah. Big week coming up. We've got job report coming up on Friday. So Canadian job report, that'll be critical in determining what's going to happen October 23rd. And then the Tuesday afterwards, inflation report. So again, we've got over the next 10 days, 2 big announcements coming out that will
and
really
that's before
dictate.
they make their
That's
choice
before
on the
the 23rd.
23rd.
What are you
So
expecting, Frank? What do you expect to see? Who knows, right?
What the employment? I expect the unemployment rate to go up slightly. I don't think as much because again, I mean, there's still it's really still the summer market, and there were some summer jobs out there, but and then we'll see a little bit of a blip because obviously we're approaching Christmas season, and really the Christmas season is going to be instrumental this year because if retail sales go down like they might, based on the fact that people can't afford a lot, then all of a sudden we're really going to see January and February employment numbers really struggle, I think. So
At least the port strike is over. Don't have to worry about
thank
that.
God.
Yeah.
Thank God, because that would have jacked inflation up right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Birthdays?
Yeah, just a couple. Kim Powell-Steele from our office celebrating her birthday, and then our good friend who just retired, Brad Beckler, celebrating his birthday today. So, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Brad.
No vowels. You noticed that?
Yeah,
see
nice.
that?
No Luigi.
See that? No Luigi, no
and-
Francesco.
Yeah, I don't.
Francesco is Brad's middle name, though.
Is it?
No.
Great name.
I
was
don't
gonna
have any
say.
birthdays, but just happy to have Adam Cote, Adam and Nash came home with Angie from Boston, so happy to have them home. And
Still a Chio, though, but
still a Chio, and he's going through some more chemo and stuff like that. So, but it's good to have him home back from Boston, and thoughts are with the Cotes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Go for that raise now, Greg.
Yes, go for it.
Have a great week,
Have a
everybody.
great weekend. Please continue to support local businesses and charities, everyone.